Good morning, everybody. It is a rainy, cloudy Monday morning in March. So, welcome. Hope everyone's feeling better about getting towards spring, maybe, and getting into nicer weather, getting our flowers and things going in our gardens. Looking at all you people with garden places at your museum. Um, okay, this morning we are going to be talking about um, kind of inventories versus cataloging and that kind of thing. This is kind of going back to my trying to stick to an overarching theme of um, workflow and things with the museum because I wanted to talk about that first meeting that we missed because I was outside shoveling snow. But I'm going to try to keep wrapping this all together for the year as like a theme. Especially as a lot of places you get the system you get on and you're like, oh, now what do I do with this? This was great, but now I have to implement everything. Um, as usual, we're going to be using the sandbox. I'm just going to go ahead and log into that. And I will pop over to Fairfield occasionally as well, just to demonstrate certain things as I know what's there. Let me go to this. I'm just changing our lineup here so I can see everybody a little better. Okay, that's better. So there's a lot of questions sometimes from folks about should I do an inventory? Do I need to do an inventory? That is really depending on what you have going on at your institution, where you are in the process of using Connecticut collections and what's really needed. I've been to a couple of groups a few years ago when I was doing collections assessments, and there were definitely some groups that really, really, really needed an inventory. There's also some other groups coming in that are like, well, we don't really need to do that. We know what we have. We just need to start getting it into the system. Um, one of the things that I used ages ago in a PowerPoint on cataloging was the slide that I'll try to make bigger, sorry. And this can go for both ways, cataloging and inventory, is skeletal records are perfectly fine, no matter which one you're doing. Um, Whether you're going in and cataloging fresh or doing new things, there's just some certain fields that you know, kind of need that will be most useful to you. My old place, I used to have, I kind of made up levels of cataloging for myself just to keep track of where I was in a record. It was based on what my predecessor had done, whether something was fully cataloged, just cataloged by a curator, just information put in as me as the collections manager of like, this is all the information I have in the object files, but I can't tell you anything more about, you know, this fancy ceramic mug that is from the, you know, 15th century before contact. You know, I don't know any of that information. That's what curators and consultants are for. But I needed to note that all of the information that I had access to was put into the record. So I kind of came up with a system on that. My first level record was skeletal record of this thing exists, this is the number, this is the name I'm calling it. Basic description is, you know, white mug with logo, something like that. Um, the date one is questionable as far as really needing it. If I had the information from the file, I could put it in. A lot of the times I didn't like to date things if I didn't really have knowledge of it. But if I could, I would do it very broad, at least say something like 18th century or 20th century, something like that, because that, believe it or not, does kind of help in sorting through records sometimes. Um, very important, no matter which one you're doing, is the location, especially doing inventory type records. Um, Back in 1981-ish, Fairfield, where I am now, they had a huge, massive, massive inventory. Um, some of you, I told my old boss this the other day because the old place, there were old inventory records that were still kicking around and they numbered those, their numbering system, they used A when they did a big collections move. So it was a lot of A numbers. And there was no source for what a lot of that stuff was. So you knew if there was an A number, you knew it existed at this point in time, but you didn't know much else about it if there wasn't much information in the record. And sometimes the file didn't have anything, and but you knew what that record was. I got down to Fairfield. We have A numbers too from that 1981 inventory. And I told him that the other day and he just laughed. I'm like, but I know what I'm going to get with those records. Sometimes I'm just going to get a piece of paper. And this is with anything. You go back to your records. Sometimes you're going to get that one little piece of paper, or you're going to get a file that's like this thick. We don't consider those at Fairfield. We don't consider those records accessioned because they were never formally given an accession number in the accession register. But I have a background to go on for those, and it gives me some information. I just started a project with a volunteer to kind of go back, and I've been wanting to do this for years and never really jumped on it. And I don't know that I'm going to finish it, but just go through A1, A2, A3, A4, and put those records in and put whatever information I have in the file from these. These are things to think about when you're considering doing an inventory, versus doing collections cataloging. How much do you want your successors to curse you or thank you? I I see those longtime people laughing. I know, you know. I was oh, by the way, I just have to say, I was in doll purgatory the other day trying to sort out some of these early accession number dolls and inventory dolls. Someday when I see you guys in person, I'll show you pictures. They're horrid and scary and slightly possessed. Sorry, sidetrack. I was cursing my predecessors, basically. This the point. So I'm happy that they did this inventory back in the 80s. It has come in very handy. Sometimes the little worksheets that they have are very useful, other times not so much. At the very least, I know this thing exists. We have moved buildings since then. So I know that the locations are not accurate anymore. They're not in the basement of the building across the street, but I know they existed, which is helpful. They could have done a little bit more with description, and I'll kind of talk about that in a second. But I can definitely tell the way some of them are grouped together is they were just going down the shelves and going, this is doll one, this is doll A1, this is doll A2, this is doll A3, this is doll parasol A4. Like, you know, they were just going down and assigning numbers. Great, that was fine. And they were marking locations on these worksheets and stuff. One thing that they didn't do was give really good descriptions. Sometimes they are non-existent. It'll say leather. Leather what? You're not being really helpful. This is getting into the what kind of description do you need for things like this? And how much description do you need? And this also goes into the cataloging part of it, adding descriptions to things, adding things in, what's going to be useful, what's not going to be useful. And some of you have heard this one before too. At the old place, we were looking for this particular dress because it was owned by a particular person and it fit, as far as we could tell, fit the criteria for something that we needed it for. Just trying to find it in the collection. And that part of the collection should have been pretty well cataloged or noted or whatever, because this was actually a cataloged item. I ended up going back, I couldn't find it. I had the date, all of the stuff up there was organized chronologically. I should have been able to go up and like put hands on, even though I had never seen it. I knew I had never seen this thing before. Should have been able to just go pull it. Could not find it. Went back to the old records and the cards in our little card catalog, and this sheath dress from the 60s that I had been looking for on the little card catalog said orange sheath dress. Oh, went right up to the record. And as soon as I went up there, went up to the record or went up to the racks rather, pulled it, went right to it, saw the orange, was like, oh, how did I not see this before? It was literally like bright orange. There's no way you could have missed it. But just that one little bit of uh, just saying orange. Sheath dress was great. Even you could have just said sleeveless dress would have been fine for those purposes, but the orange was really a key. So think through some of that as you're going through whether you're going to be cataloging or inventorying. Um, the it's going to depend on your time for some of this. My intern, I just have we're not tracking down. I'm kind of looking at this as almost doing another inventory. It's just entering it into the system. Um, she's going through and putting things in from the marks, and I am not pulling these objects, with one exception the other day. I'm not pulling these objects to like recatalog. I just want to get them in. So at some point, if my curator is looking for dolls, I know what I have and I know where to find them and I know like a little bit of information about them. Um, actually, I'm going to scare you guys with some of these. I'm so sorry, but it's useful for this actually example. Uh, I'm in Fairfield because I know I just did these. And we're going to go by identifier and we're going to go thumbnails. And I don't know why I have oral history summary, but whatever. Oh, that's why this is like this. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go look up the dolls that I did the other day. And again, apologies for the scary pictures on some of them. It will be useful because we have a lot of, we have a big doll collection. Register, I'm going to go thumbnails and identifier, and that should be fine. So, a lot of doll related things. We're not into my A number inventories yet. These are the cute dolls. Oh, I will show you this one. I'm not a doll person. She's really cute, so she's not scary. Oh, these are the scary ones. All I have in the information for this doll is one doll belonged to this woman. Doll and clothing has been listed as subpoint. Like there's no description of this doll whatsoever. This is not useful. And this doesn't have to be about dolls. This has to be about anything. It has this A number, was done as inventory. I don't have a location for it. I know where our dolls are, so I can put her location in at some point. But it's not there. But this was all I had. Um, Also, I would like to note that in the object file, there is a piece of paper I should have taken pictures of this. I didn't even think about it in preparation for this. There was a piece of paper for every individual subpoint that they gave it. So they gave it a 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. As you go on, a couple of the dolls had like 6 or 8 pieces of clothing, and there was a piece of paper for each one. Don't do that. You don't need to do that. It's not useful. If you have a paper sheet you're working on for your interns, you can just list them all there. It's fine. I am never going to put all those individual subpoints into the system as individual subpoints. I am going to do this. I'm going to make a list. There's no need to do something like that. So think about stuff like that when you're going through and doing inventory. Other things that are very important or something you may want to do it, like a tea set or something. I wouldn't even do it with that. Yeah, this lady, she has 7 pieces. We don't need to know all that. We just need to know the main information. This helps a little bit. Doll, wax, clothes. Slightly better. Not great. The one I need, it should be coming up. Was, oh, this is a little better. German bisque head, which unless you are done a few dolls, you have no idea what that means. So using other terms works well too. Kid body, movable as composition. Okay, that's fine. Um, this one, a little bit better. Um, body, cloth, stuffed, squeaky box, squeak box. I didn't notice she had a squeak box when I pulled her up the other day, but that's a little bit more information. Again, you don't need separate pieces of paper, but listing them is okay. Um, they had a lot of time on their hands at some point doing this. Uh, yeah. Where's my girl? The one girl that I'm looking for. So she should be coming up. Oh, here she is. This one is very interesting because brass head, cloth body. So making a notation like this and giving a little bit more detail is fine. You don't have to give ad nauseum detail. She does have a brass head. It's very interesting. Um, you don't need to go into great detail about clothing and everything else with these things. Um, if you're looking at just doing inventory, just note the highlights. If you're doing a doll exhibit, I'm so sorry to be getting on dolls on a Monday morning. If you're doing a doll exhibit and you want to do more extensive cataloging or you have a very important collection of stuff, then you can get into more of the descriptive cataloging the way that you would do any other thing. See my cataloging from from office hours last year. Um, I have notes for her, but this at least helps me find her. Going back to the I wasn't going to pull everything the other day, um, wanted to pull this because I'm like, what does a brass head doll look like? I ended up having to pull her because it was a weird numbering question. So I went and grabbed her and looked at her. So now she has an image too. This actually brings up the question of images. Um, do you want to take images for all of these things as you're inventorying and going along? Um, picture tells, you know, picture tells a story better than 1,000 words of description. Because me trying to describe this weird brass head doll thing would have been interesting. I probably would have Googled online to see if there's a better way of doing it. But I did the oh yeah, I did the back too. Their little weird curly hair. Um, take a picture if it's easy because you can use your phone and upload a picture from your phone right to the record. Go ahead and do it and take a snapshot. Um, there's a whole reason to go in and set up a good digital photography system in your institution, rename your files properly, um, archive them, track them, that kind of thing. Realistically, we don't all have time to do that. Uh, I would love to. I have some gorgeous pictures in here of a couple of things that I did have time to sit and photograph, and my predecessors did as well, which is great. But I don't always have the time to do that. I will go back to one of my other favorite examples for that, for the whether you should take a picture or not, is my purple fan example. Yep. Along with dolls, we also have a lot of fans. Why they spend all the time on the dolls and fans, I don't know. But going through, I found old images. I'm looking at these. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. At least I can get a generic idea of what these things are. And I have like a quick site thing with these. Um, this was done probably 15 years ago in the, oh, look, we can do digital pictures age. This is from the old database. So I can see this is a pink or a purple fluffy fan. That's great. When I go in and do a close look and blow it up, that is a terrible image. That is not going to do, I would like to say it's not going to do anybody any good, but it actually did do me good because I know generically what it looks like very loosely. Um, it's not, that's a lot of these aren't things that I'm going to use online unless it's passable. There's a couple of kind of snapshot things that I've used, but I've not done a lot of them. But this will give me an idea, inventory wise, what something looks like. Even if you're doing more of a catalog record, just to get like a placeholder in even. The I'm going to go to the media tab for this one quick. They were naming the files, naming the old files here. I don't know if I can have it. No, it's not gonna let me. But you can see they were giving it file names, which is great. There's a lot of other ones. If I go into my history and objects and go back to one of these dolls, her media file is just going to be whatever my phone named it. Is that ideal? Really, but this is kind of a quick and dirty versus permanent catalog, not permanent catalog, but more expensive catalog record. Um, I do put these in our server at the museum in the archive. A lot of the time, actually, these I didn't, but a lot of the other ones I did if I'm doing a whole bunch of things I've been working on an offsite inventory project, basically. Those I'm putting into our server database to keep them. Given the fact that iPhones nowadays and other phones are much better resolution than ever before, basically, there's no reason not to try to take a really nice picture and keep it in archive, aside from the fact that it's a JPEG. I would like to do a digitization, either office hours or workshop at some point again, for folks who are working on stuff like this. The ultimate, if you want to really have a good archival version of something, is a high quality, high resolution TIFF file named properly, added to your record. And then also we have several backups of the database, but I always recommend to people that they keep their own backups as well and keep your own files archived somewhere, whether you have it on servers at your institution or you have it hard drive on a computer somewhere or something like that as well. Just to keep a backup for yourself is always a good idea. I have done with these, and I didn't do this the other day just because I never got back into the record. I got off into other things. I do usually go in and make a little note on these and just say storage snapshot for reference only. And just put it like that, and then just say, detail of tags on dolls. I only actually just started kind of filling in this information a little bit more in the past few months, just because it shows up better on my system when I blow up the record. And this is leaving information for my successors as well to be like, why did she take this weird picture? Because I wanted to see these really useful tags that are on here that I have the donation information for. Some of my records are really weird, but some of them have these really nice old granny note style tags. When I am, so I recommend if you can, if you're doing a set thing, go ahead and take pictures. You can even like create records on your phone. They're a little unwieldy sometimes because the phone's not got a built app for it or anything, or it's not really customized for that, but it is possible. I just had another thought. Oh, so when thinking about doing this as well, if you're just going back to this kind of skeletal information, most of this information is going to be pretty easy to hop around on in your record. You've got your identifier here. If you are doing an inventory and you're going through and you come across a bunch of things that don't have numbers, think through a way to identify those as you're doing your inventory and think about whether you want to, I don't recommend this necessarily, assign accession numbers on the fly, or you just want to give it an inventory number as a placeholder. We'll use my A system because both of my institutions has had this. You can start with whatever, A1, A2, A3, stay consistent with it, keep a list somewhere of how you're doing it. As you guys know, this does not, when you create a new record, does not automatically come up with the next number in the run, which I kind of wish it did, but then at the same time, it's kind of good to be able to think it through and do it yourself. The reason I caution against, oh, we're just going to put accession numbers on everything. What if you actually don't want to accession that item? What if I go in and find out that this doll is actually nothing to do with Fairfield and she's actually belongs in Stratford, and I want to send it to Stephanie. And now I have to go through the deaccession process and do that rather than just saying, oh, by the way, we're notifying you that this unaccessioned item is going to be transferred to Stratford. Um, it's don't rush to accession things. This number will serve perfectly well as an identifier when I trip across any information about this record. And we have plenty of times put A numbers or any other identification numbers on object labels in exhibits. You're identifying it. This is what the computer does is it tracks all this for you. It's also going to track all of these down here, all of these other identifiers. I have old numbers that it took me a while to figure out what the heck they were. And once I figured it out, I was like, oh, I'm so glad I kept those and didn't just randomly delete things. Because things like this have helped me quite a bit. Having that weird number that doesn't mean anything except to like the collections manager. Um, um, so that's one thing to think about when you're going through things as well. Oh, I know what I was talking about. Sorry. So most of that main information is here. Your identifier, your title. As you're going through, if you want to give it an alternate title, go ahead and do it. So it's going to take you another 2 seconds when going through an inventory. Like I said, the date, that takes a little bit more time sometimes. So it's not necessarily something you'll need unless that's ready information as you're going through your shelves of stuff. Um, and again, the curatorial description, saying that she has a brass head is very important. Don't just say like closed doll. Know anything really specific. Don't feel you have to say, small, large, medium, whatever, because against what? Compared to what? If there's a standard thing in your head of like, mug, you could say like, okay, you're not going to say oversized, normal, whatever. But if I have like giant drinking tankard thing, maybe I do want to say oversized mug. But otherwise, you don't have to use descriptors like that a lot of the time. Do things that are more concrete, like color, shape, materials, things like that. White mug with logo. So that's going to serve you well rather than trying to say, oversized coaster, oversized note or large notebook or large pen or something like that. Um, just had another, I don't know where I was going with that. Sorry. Let me go back to her. So sorry. I don't have that. Oh, we'll go with this weird random dress that I have here. I've got old numbers from this. Go ahead and put old numbers. As we're going through that skeletal record again, we want to talk about location, which you do have to switch tabs and go down here to your locations. No matter what, as you're entering records in, whether you're cataloging or doing an inventory, I would make sure that your locations are set up ahead of time. It's going to be easier in the end when you just can go in and say that I want to update her location and now she's on E08D. And you can just go and click it and go on from there. Or you can just say, we've moved her over to be on display at Ogden House temporarily, something like that. That's fine, rather than having to stop and go, oh, wait, now I have to go back, create that location, go ahead and do it. It's absolutely fine to go through inventory wise and start working off a notebook somehow, just start doing things in there and then entering it after the fact. I've been through a couple of collections moves, and both times or a few times I've written stuff down in a notebook. There is the danger of mistranscribing stuff or misreading something, but it's sometimes a lot faster to just do that and then enter the records once you either get back to the museum or the next day or something like that. One thing I have done with that, let me make sure I'm hitting all my thoughts for this. Session, title, basic description, date, and location. I wanted to add picture in this, but I'd already copied the slide over from my old thing. But I would say picture if you can, it's useful. What I have found, there's a couple of people that have been really good artists in my predecessors, and they've drawn little pictures on the catalog worksheet, which is amazing. Because one of the things I've been trying to find information on just tripped across this big piece of farm equipment out in our barn, and I found it in this. I tripped across. I'm like, wait, is this a thing? Went to the record, opened up. There's a perfect little drawing of the thing, so there's no doubt in my mind that this was the correct thing. Um, I can't draw. My people are not my successors are not going to see little drawings by me because it would be horrid and they wouldn't it would be a blob. But I can take a quick snapshot of it. So one thing I have been doing, or I did do as well, I think a lot of you have heard us talking about doing custom screens for people. And um, uh, if you want a screen for a specific object or specific project, something like that, let us know and we can help you do that. Um, let's see. So I was just checking the chat just to see what's in there. And Joanne, yes, we can. So we can do custom screens for a bunch of different things. We can do that. I've got a couple in the sandbox. I'll just pop into a random object just to get to the screen part. Oh, my gloves. Those are always handy. I have a couple loose ones down here as examples for folks. We've done quick data entry screens for good for cataloging that have just what you need to put in there, that you're not going and having like a full-fledged curatorial or consultant cataloging record in there. You're just getting like a good, I'm going to call it like curator level. It's just a little bit nicer than something I would be able to do. Um, and then, so we've done quick entries like that. So you don't have to hop around a bunch of different places, just pick the fields that you want and we can put them in one place. But I've also done a couple inventory examples for people. So basic inventory, place here, identifier, preferred label, which is the main label, curatorial description. I've got a lot of examples of moving things around in the storage locations, and then just a location note. As a lot of you know, I am very pro using notes when possible. It just is helpful sometimes. Something that you may not want to put in your curatorial description because eventually that may be something that's going to end up online if you make a record public and you don't have to go back and worry about it. But you can just have a note, which the notes field is not public. Locations are definitely not public access and they don't show up anywhere. They're just within your system. But any of the notes fields are just back of the house, your own information. They don't go public. So I can put, notes like this. Temp shelving while waiting for paperwork and place an accession number. Or you're doing an inventory, you can do location note, needs new box. Box needs to be separated out. Could use more padding, something like that, more packing material. But this is like a quickie one screen. If I was either standing with my laptop looking at the shelf or entering it off of a notebook paper the next day, you could just stay on this one screen. It would be totally fine. I do have an expanded one that we did as an example with that same information. Other identifiers, write those down as well. Even if you don't know what they are, this is good for either cataloging or inventory. It had a run of numbers. I had no idea what they were. Wrote them down anyway, just in case, because I wasn't sure and didn't know if I'd ever find the answer. Found the answer one day and so glad I wrote those numbers down because it has been useful in tracking down what some of these things are. So if you have other identifiers, useful to put in there. For label curatorial, in this expanded one, I put related entities just because if I have one of those little granny note tags, sometimes it would be useful to just, if I have somebody in there, just attach them right now versus I could always put it in the description, but being able to attach it to the person as you go is helpful as well. Notes field, storage locations, object status, also really useful as well to have in the bottom of your inventory page if you're doing a separate just custom screen, because you can note whether it's accessioned, whether you should think about accessioning it. Missing obviously doesn't work for this one. But if something's also a pending accession, like, oh, we might want to, or this is terrible, we want to deaccession this, you can still put it in if it doesn't take too much time. And that way you can kind of pull stuff together a little bit better. Get a Fairfield for a second. So I have an offsite inventory screen that we did. Because of that inventory that I'm doing, I had to move a lot of boxes around over there, and I did not ever finish going through all the boxes from my previous move. So I'm kind of reorganizing after a couple projects and want to have this so I can just pull up this one screen as I'm staying there and enter stuff in with my identifiers, others, storage location I can add, location notes that I'm adding for something else in the status, and that's it. And that's all I need for this project. And I can go in and move all these dresses. Let's see. Trying to think of another. Oh, let me go to. I'm thinking this is a more cataloged record. I don't remember if it is or not. I always go to Mary Fish Solomon, or Mary Fish Solomon portrait, but I don't think she's cataloged as I want her to be. And as usual, this is easier for me to look at the images for, there we go. That's exactly what I wanted. Example of a little bit more cataloged record. This is going to take more time. If you're just trying to get things in and get a handle on what's where, you don't need to go this extreme. This is going to be a longer curatorial description, although we did put in a public access, which is off of one of our old exhibit labels, and a lot more information about this and a lot more notes for this item. I think there's condition in there as well. Yeah, because it was work done on this painting and just more information about it and physical characteristics. Measurements, something to think about when doing an inventory, kind of in the vein of that, describing something as small or large or whatever. I think if you're going to do that, maybe do a quick measurement, but we all know that it takes a little bit of time, even though it sounds easy to like pull out the measuring tape and just do it. Think about what you're going to need for that. Is it going to be useful to have your dimensions in for your paintings? Well, yeah, probably yes. But how quick and dirty are you doing things? I will say one benefit to doing dimensions versus going off all old worksheets. My worksheets from that inventory, there's a lot of dimensions on there, but they very often, I don't remember if I put any, I don't think I put any for these guys. I can't think of a good example off the top of my head. But the dimensions are 45 centimeters times 35 by 35 centimeters. That's it. I don't know if it's height times width. I don't know if it's width times height. I don't know if it's length. I have no idea what it is because they did not label it. In my experience, in labels at my old place, especially, it was always height times width times depth was the order. So if you look at a weird thing like that, you could assume height times width. My realization of that was looking at a painting that used to be was right behind my head at my desk. And there's my woman with ruffled cap. There she is. She's very clearly portrait format. I went in and looked at her dimensions, and her dimensions said 25 inches by 30 inches. And I'm like, so that would mean she's like 25 by 30. That's not right, because she's very much this and not this. And she was one of the key moments when I realized that they didn't necessarily always do it the same way. They did it the same way as far as they knew, but I've also run into things that were done correctly. So always know your height times width. If you're putting it straight into the boxes, you're perfect. You're fine. If you don't write it out in notes, that's fine. You have it in these boxes and it'll tell you what things actually are. Um, so it's definitely a thought process of, I would think it would be more useful for things like paintings to have dimensions in there versus things like my dolls. They're they're fine. If you have a little measurement ruler or something for photography and just pop it in as you're going through, go ahead and do that, and that's useful. But thinking about what your end goal is and what you want to be able to do when you get to the end of this. I was looking at patient. Oh, I know where I was. Sorry. I was at our offsite inventory thing. And these are always things in your records that you can put in location notes or just regular notes, needs dimensions. Um, seems to be, old records indicate incorrect dimensions, needs to be remeasured, something like that. My volunteer is currently just putting in, I'm having her put dimensions in from the worksheets. Sometimes, not all the time, because it's, oh yeah, that's fine for this apron. I don't know off the top of my head any of the ones, but I know there was dimensions for the dolls. I'm like, go ahead and put them in. Just write it out the way they had it, and we know that it's weird. Let's see. About quarter. Does anybody have any questions, thoughts about any of this inventory versus cataloging? Wish I grabbed a couple more of my trying to see if there's any other good slides that I can share from this old PowerPoint. Ooh. Oh, I will actually. Let me see if I can reshare this. Thinking about what your users needing, versus your internal people versus your external people. Your external people are going to be looking for different information versus your internal people. Your researchers, your general public, your history nuts kind of thing, versus internal information about where something's located, any other details, things like that. Let me go flip through for a second. I know where I'm going. And this is thinking about, that was my images. Or, this is kind of an images thing. We don't necessarily have the time or money to do a really nice professional picture. We can take perfectly good pictures on the fly with like a decent setup. Or this is the one I always say, I took it from one ladder aiming towards another ladder on the top of a ladder, but you can see it, it's fine. It depends what you want to do. Even placeholders, really old crappy picture can get replaced by a nicer one, purple fan. And yeah, just what are your goals? What's your time limit? What's your manpower? That kind of thing, and taking into consideration who's working on it as far as manpower too, like who's working on what, interns, volunteers, professional staff, that kind of thing. I'm gonna stop recording.